So some friends have been asking me recently about ayahuasca and DMT, and when I've been getting into those breakdowns or those comparisons between the two, there's some things that have been coming up that I haven't really shared on this channel in reference to both ayahuasca and DMT. So I thought it was a good time to share those comparisons and realizations with the channel and go a little deeper into sort of the political stuff, but mostly the breakdown of how this medicine fits within the relationship we have with this experience. So, as a quick introduction, the first time I ever took ayahuasca was 10 years ago now. And it was something that I wanted to do for a while. I wanted to do it right, meaning I wanted to do it in the surroundings and on the land where this medicine comes from. So I took a trip down to Peru. I was in Cusco specifically. The whole trip was including Machu Picchu, possibly going to Lake Titicaca. In fact, my friend did make it out there, but I chose to stay back. But we did end up going to Machu Picchu, went around Cusco. Sacsayhuaman is there. And one of the first things that I wanted to do was, before we went to Machu Picchu, was to take like a quick ayahuasca journey. Now, some people actually go into the forest with the shaman and stay there for like a week and do that whole thing. Sometimes it could be around like $800 to $1,000, but they have it available where they bring in the shaman from the forest to the city area, and then you can like sign up there for an experience and meet the shaman in a house that's like on the edge of the forest, but kind of away from the city. So you're not surrounded by cars and people. You're kind of away, it's quiet, and you're in a safe space in a sense. You have the space to relax and rest and trip pretty much and go on that trip. And this, I think, only came out to about 300 something dollars, maybe around $300, maybe a little less than that. But it included the cleansing process, it included the food, it included the trip. And mind you, you're paying for the shaman, the space, the lodging, and so on and so forth. And it was just one night because it was just one experience. So, to make a long story short, in Peru or in Cusco, the main thing that they were doing before you get into the medicine is to cleanse your body out as much as possible. And they tell people who are doing this for like addiction or something extreme like that, where your body's going to have an extreme shock. What they do is they tell you to wait for a while to detox yourself. I didn't have to do any of that, but people who are looking into this just know that you're going to have, if you're an extreme drinker or you have some extreme addiction problems relating to something like that, some of these shaman are going to tell you that maybe you should take a little bit more time before you go into this space. Because if you go into that space with having all that stuff to deal with, it's going to be difficult for the people that are working with you, and it's going to be difficult for you during that experience because most of your time is going to be spent fighting the medicine because your addiction is so much in your way. But I didn't have that problem. My friend didn't have that problem. Another part of this on the psychological or on a deeper layer is that, similar to your body having a kind of fight back response to the medicine, your mind will have a fight back response to the medicine when you hold on to a lot of the Western medicine, Western belief systems, a lot of the ego, anything that's very on this artificial, shallow kind of perspective of reality. That medicine takes you to a baseline space. And if your mind is fighting with that foundational experience, then you're going to have a lot of trouble too. So I didn't have any experiences like that. I was pretty much set up to go. I had been planning on this as far as cleansing physically, psychologically, spiritually for like a year and a half into before going on that trip, and I was ready. So we get to the space. Well, before you get to the space, the day before, the people who are taking you out there first take you to a space close to in town where you are, and they take you to an area like a hotel or an old hotel that has like a few bathrooms in a close area, and they're taking you there because now this is not across the board. I'm sure other people or other groups don't do it, but I really enjoyed this because it was very much a big part of the experience. So what they do is, like I said, they have to cleanse you out, just like you can't be in that space of having to deal with addiction or some kind of other substance in your body. To have the best experience with the medicine, your body has to be cleansed out of pretty much everything in a fasting space. So what they do is they collect this sulfur water from the spring that is connected to the local volcano. And what that sulfur water does is when you drink it, it completely cleanses you out. They bring gallons of it because each person who is going to be a part of the ceremony has to drink 10 glasses of this sulfur water. And it's totally cool. It's natural. I mean, it's going to flush right through your body. And that's the point. And we stay there as long as it takes for the last person to drink all that water. And after the second glass of sulfur water, you're ready to go. And you're starting to, you're going to have to go to the bathroom right after that. And it's pretty difficult. Like your body is not rejecting it, but your body is trying to it's like, what the hell are you doing? What's going on here? But after a while, so that the first 2 glasses, 3 glasses, you start to feel a little bit better. And then 4th, 5th, 6th glass, it starts to get a little difficult. You got 4 more glasses to go. You don't think like how much can I have in my body? 7th, 8th, 9th glass, you're pretty much done already. And then the 10th glass, 9th and 10th glass is really just to get the last bit of whatever is in your body. And then I'm pretty sure that night we fasted, and then we were able to have a very light breakfast. And then right after we have our light breakfast, we go to the transportation spot, and then we meet up with them. They took us out to the spot. The shaman are already there. They're preparing. They're doing their thing. And once you get on location, you're pretty much silent after the ceremonial shaman does his thing. So there's 2 shaman. There's a ceremonial shaman, and then there's the ayahuasca shaman. And the ayahuasca shaman is strictly involved with the medicine itself. He and his family are a part of producing the medicine. They take the medicine with you, and they're with you during the whole trip. The ceremonial shaman is more of getting your mind right, and he's involved before and after the trip. So once you get onto the land, they show you around, they show you your bed, you set up your stuff, and then you immediately go out to the ceremonial shaman. And the ceremonial shaman has a fire going out in the yard where it's kind of open and quiet. You go out there, and he has a bunch of, they look like little toys, little trinkets and stuff, little pieces of something that are really just supposed to represent something that you attach a thought, or something that you're going to let go of, or something that you want to go into. You attach it to that little toy or that little talisman, whatever it is. You attach a particular energy to it, and you have a whole bunch of these. So the shaman asks you, he says, okay, what are you wanting to accomplish here? What are you trying to do? Is this for cleansing? Is this for travel? Is this for healing? Is this for expanding your awareness? Whatever it is, you take that energy and you put it into a focus, and you put it into this individual thing. What happens is that everybody folds all of those little pieces up into a piece of newspaper, you hand it over to the shaman. He does his prayer ceremony over it, and one by one, each thing is thrown into the fire. And then, so you're getting a lot of clearing, a lot of baseline, kind of the way you are clearing out your physical body. This is a form of clearing out your psychological and spiritual bodies. That lasted for about an hour, a little over an hour. And once that was done, you're pretty much set. You just had your body cleansed, and now you have your spirit and your psyche cleansed. And what they tell you is that by this time, it's like 11, 12 or something like that, by this time in the morning. And the medicine ayahuasca is not administered until the evening because it's a feminine energy medicine, and that deals with the dark. The daytime is for the masculine energy, and the masculine energy is connected to, in balance with the ayahuasca, San Pedro, which is a cactus, and the active ingredient in San Pedro is mescaline. And I'll get into that very briefly, but for this one, the feminine energy of ayahuasca is administered at night. So the rest of the day, between the late morning into when the sun goes down, they tell you to go back to your room, think about what you were wanting to get out of this experience, take a little nap, rest a little bit. You're still not eating anything throughout the whole day, and you're sitting in silence for that whole time. The rest of those hours, you're in your own space, in your own room, and you're just there to think and be in your own little awareness space. And that's another form of reset, because it's slowing down your mind, it's slowing down everything. You're not involved in anything other than yourself by the time the medicine is ready for you, or you're ready for the medicine. So once it comes to about an hour after sunset, they invite you up to the ceremonial room where everybody has their sleeping bags and a pillow and a little bucket ready near their spot, in and around, or however it's designed. The shaman is up there too with their family. Sometimes if they have a family, the family will be involved, and they're lighting sage, they're lighting tobacco, they're playing music, they're around. And you also have people who are going to assist you during this experience. So there's like 3 or 4 maybe assistants, depending on how many people there. There were only like 6 or 7 people in my experience, which was good because it was a smaller group. Sometimes they can get a lot bigger, but this time it was a really good focused group, so a lot of the people could really be available for you if you needed them to. So you sit down, the shaman explains a few things, the translator explains a few things about what's going on, and then once everything is explained, they pretty much just pour maybe just over a pint or about a pint of it, at least at this experience, of ayahuasca into a cup. And they tell you, look, you can either drink it all the way down in one shot or you can sip on it, but it tastes horrible. So they advise that you get it down in one time. And I'm all about that. I'm like, I'll just drink it to the head right now. So that's what I did. And you pretty much just sit there until it starts to get into your body and start working with you. And it takes about 45 minutes. So this puts you at about, we'll say, average 9 o'clock. You start at 8 and then you drink at like 8:30. So around like 9, you're starting to get into that space. And the introduction into the medicine is to first cleanse, another type of cleansing. And this is the vomiting. Some people experience having to go to the bathroom, like take a shit, but that's a minority compared to the majority of people who just have to vomit. And that's why you have the bucket there, you have a bathroom nearby, and that's why you have people to help you, whatever it is that you have to do. But the vomiting experience, what I've learned after having done it more than once now, and even with other types of experiences that involve like vomiting, it's a heavy cleansing space. Like your body, like when you think about fevers and stuff like that, your body is heating up to burn that shit out of your body. Well, vomiting is the same way. You're getting a whole bunch of extra. It's not just the stuff that you're getting all kinds of extra stuff out of your body. And on top of that, when it's involved with medicine, you're opening yourself up when you're vomiting. So you're allowing the medicine to get into your body even deeper, on deeper layers of your different bodies. So in that space of vomiting, it's not, you see it and you feel it as vomiting, but you're actually just opening up. And when you're opening up, you're letting go. Like, this is what vomiting is. You're literally letting go. So when you're letting go physically, you're letting go on many different levels that it allows the ayahuasca to interact with you, because you need to let go in order to let that space in, because you're letting go of parts of your experience that are really just going to be in the way of deeper perspectives and parts of your experience that you will be going to or tapping into when you're in that space, when you're with that medicine. So when I experienced it, and they tell you, like, try to hold on as long as possible to leave the medicine in your body for as long as possible, because you want to have as much, because you are going to regurgitate a lot of the medicine when you do throw up, and you want to keep it in your body. So they tell you, like, don't just immediately throw up, just, hold it for as long as you can. So I held it for about 15-20 minutes, so pushing about an hour, because it starts to kick in around 45 minutes, and then that extra little 15 minutes helps however much it's going to help. It's going to be different for other people. But once it was time to go, like, I had time to get up and go to the bathroom and throw up in the toilet area. So, I mean, the bucket's just there for like emergencies, like, oh, I can't do it anymore. So if you can, they'll tell you, because you're still conscious. It's not tripping out to where you're just like totally in this space. You have no concept of your conscious reality. You're very much aware and present. So I get to the bathroom, and once I start throwing up, there's this huge relief, and my visuals start to change into this crazy blue and white and neon kind of light blues mandala shapes. And I'm like, as I'm throwing up, those images just get more and more consuming my perspective, and brighter and more vibrant. And I feel like I'm going deeper and deeper into that space each time that I throw up. And that's where I experience for the first time the cleansing energies of what we call vomiting. So once I'm there, my body is just like, yes, finally, you did this. And now the medicine, the active ingredients in there can just roam free, because your body is now at an equilibrium. So now what's left is just your mind and your spirit to experience this medicine. This is, I would say, best case scenario. Best case scenario is not to throw up at all, but majority of people are going to, and I see it as a positive to do that. But some people don't, so there's that too. It's rare, but it's there. Once you go back to your little comfortable space, then you're just there for 5 hours straight. You're about to trip for 5 hours, and like I said, it's not some extreme trippy, hippie trippy sort of thing. You're really tripping at your own pace, because like I said, you can close your eyes and you can go into wherever you want to go, and then you can open your eyes and then you can be present. You're going to have some visuals sometimes, like you can see deeper into things sometimes, but mostly if you want to hold on, like anchor yourself down, you can be present. But like what the shaman explained to you, when you do get into that space, you have the ability to travel to different parts of yourself. This could involve other people. This can involve other experiences, traumas, abuse, nice things, good things that have happened. And when you're traveling to those experiences, you're traveling from a deeper perspective, from a deeper part of you. So when you go back and observe that abuse and that trauma and whatever it is, when you go back to that space, you're seeing yourself in that experience from a deeper perspective, and it changes who you are once you get there. It changes how you observe, how that experience has its grasp on you. Sometimes you can clear them completely. There's a huge amount of forgiveness that you can go into. Like, not the whole sort of political version of forgiveness, the medicinal version of forgiveness, not the bullshit, not the forgiveness in the mouth, like people say, the love in the mouth. The true love, the true forgiveness, the forgiveness of yourself beyond the experience, the I'm bigger than this entire experience, so why am I even holding on to this shit kind of forgiveness and love? So you can tap in and travel to those experiences and do things that you never even perceived were possible. You become, in a sense, your own spiritual therapist. And you can use things like tapping into nature, natural earth energies, specific things like the trees, tree energy. You can tap into angelic energies. This is something that happened to me where, like I said, this is the dark birthing process energy. So how I explain it to people is that when you go into nightmares or when you go into dreaming as a kid, what happens is that you're introduced with nightmares heavily, because you have to break through that in order to make yourself more comfortable with being able to travel in that space. And that space, for whatever reason, and you keeps you from going deep until you start to prepare yourself naturally. Because if you don't prepare yourself, you're going to shock yourself or put yourself in a position that's not going to be workable for where you are at that moment in time. This is why you aren't put in positions that you can't handle before you're ready to handle them. So kids deal with nightmares. Once you start to face your nightmares, instead of running from these beings, running from these experiences, once you start to face them, it changes you again. And when you change, the experience changes, and you can now travel and interact within this experience on a level that you've never been able to do it before. So that means the beings and the experiences that are within that space are going to become more complex. So the same thing is relevant for an ayahuasca trip. It's an evolution of experience. So before you go deep into the medicine of ayahuasca, you have to first go through that same kind of stepping stone transitional space of dealing with nightmares. And in ayahuasca space, nightmares can be seen as negative energies. However you perceive the negative energies in your conscious reality, they'll be more vibrant and bigger in many different ways when you go into that space in ayahuasca. So this is why people have a lot of difficulty in their first trip, or even the majority of their first trip. Usually when you're coming down, you feel you kind of let go. Most people do. But a lot of people who don't have the awareness to navigate that space are going to deal with some darker type of stuff, which is all beneficial. It's positive, because you have to do that before you go any further. And the next time you go on the trip, or sometimes if you're dealing with it earlier in the trip like I was, you'll have the next, so you'll say, let's deal with it for the first hour of the trip. You'll have 4 more hours to go beyond the nightmare space, or whatever it is, the fear and the more prime carnal energies there. Whereas some people are going to have 3 hours, 4 hours of having to deal with that, and then they're only going to have 1 more hour to do whatever it is that they need to do on different spaces. But like I said, when you go back to it, when you change, it adjusts you completely. So the next time you come back, you'll be a different person. You'll have a different experience. So, like I said, this is going to change you for life, because it's changing the way you experience life. It's going to change the way you experience time, the same way time is different in a dream space. Your time is different in a conscious and ayahuasca medicinal space for 5 hours, and it changes your relationship with time, which changes your relationship with yourself and changes your relationship with other people and how you think. Your thoughts are based upon time. Your processing energies are based upon time. So many things are adjusted, and in this tidal wave of what the fuck did I just do? Where the fuck did I just go? And when you come back, you're a different space. Like I said, I'm saying come back in reference to the medicine. You're still anchored here, but you're able to travel a good distance that is beyond this experience, beyond this earth experience. And this is a good transition point into the DMT experience, because in reference to the beyond earth energies and experience, how I've explained it to my friends is that ayahuasca, the active ingredient or the activation point in ayahuasca is your DMT, which is in your body. It's in everything, but it's at a concentrated space, kind of like San Pedro's active ingredient is mescaline. Diving into DMT, pure DMT, is a more direct source. This is why, how I explain it, it only takes 15 minutes to go on that trip in comparison to ayahuasca. So the trip and the experience is going to be different, but the lengths, the distance, the time is going to be very similar. The where you can go, the energies that you can tap into are going to be very similar. But in reference to DMT, it's only going to be for 15 minutes. In reference to ayahuasca, it's going to be for 5 hours. Now, the difference between ayahuasca and DMT is that when you go into ayahuasca, you're ingesting heavy earth energies. And this is why it takes a little longer to tell that story, because how I explained it to my friends is that ayahuasca gives you 5 hours to experience the story of whatever you perceive as reality. DMT is the active ingredient there, and it only takes 15 minutes to experience that story of reality if you go that far. And the difference between those two is that, how I've explained it, is that ayahuasca, having that earth energy and being anchored into that space so heavily, it's going to take a little bit longer to traverse those storylines, get through that. So this is why it takes extra hours to get to the point, pretty much, whatever it is, or allow you to get to the story to get to that point. And when you're going on that journey, you're going to have to explain and read a lot of earth stories. So you're going to have to read the story about the water, read the earth, read the sun, read the moon, read the human experience, the balances between all living things within this experience. With DMT, you don't have to do that. DMT is just the active ingredient of the experience itself. So you're immediately in that space and you can tap into whatever it is, but you're going to be missing out on a lot of the earth energy. So this is why now it's not to say it's not there and you can't tap into it, because you can if you choose. The only thing is that when you're taking ayahuasca, in order to get to any spaces, you have to be introduced to that energy first. So because it has to go in order of involvement, and the physical reality is part of that involvement, because you have those earth energies activating that medicine in your experience. You have that root, you have heavy duty earth energies that need to be processed. So with DMT, those energies are not there and you can just process the experience. So with the DMT trip, for me, and you could smoke the DMT, it's immediate and it only lasts 15 minutes, and you can go into that space of in and out just like ayahuasca, but you're like immediately on the freeway. Whereas with ayahuasca, you have the ability to go on the freeway and into the forest and, across the world and into these different things. But compared between the two, you have the ability to go go there for a little bit longer, but also go there with the same capabilities in reference to your intentions. So DMT is not necessarily limited to the feminine. It's a balance of the feminine and the masculine, which is why a lot of you don't have extreme reactions to DMT. You're just immediately balanced in that space, and whatever it is that you interact with is up to you on how you perceive it. So some people can, go there and still see some scary shit. Other people can go there and see some of the most beautiful and warm energies of all that is. And this was my experience when I went there. This is after having done ayahuasca twice, I think. Yeah. And it's real it's real quick to explain, but in comparison to ayahuasca, because I'm going to go back to the rest of the ayahuasca trip after this, but the DMT trip, on the best trip, because I did it a couple of times, once I got used to it and knew what to do and was in a nicer space, because one time I did it indoors, the next time I did it outside in this pretty intense space. But I think this was needed because when you're not surrounded by these square box apartments and all that other stuff, your energies are really able to connect more directly and fly. There's nothing in the way. So once we tapped into that space, I was immediately very similar to when I was puking. I explained that whole blue and light blue, neon blue, whites, and that mandala energy. In DMT, this was very orange, red, yellow, a little bit of white, but I was surrounded immediately when I closed my eyes. I was surrounded by these orange, this moving, alive sort of energy that was completely surrounding me. If I can close my eyes and still see something, that's what it was. And it was brighter than anything else. And it was alive, and I wanted to know what it was. And the more and more I tapped into trying to figure out what it was, the more and more I started to feel that this was a living being of sorts. I hesitate to say being because it's not even limited to say to being, to a specific being. It was a living entity of some sorts, even deeper than that. How I explained it to my friends was that if you can understand that there's a mother and a father energy, or a masculine and feminine, but specifically a mother and father energy, you can feel that warmth, you can feel that connection. Well, there's also grandfather and grandmother energies that exist across the board. Like when you see a grandmother anywhere around the world, you know that's a grandmother. When you see a real mother or a real father, and you're like, that's like fatherly, motherly energy. It's universal. So there's a universal grandmother energy that was present in that space that's what I narrowed it down to, because every time I kept asking, like, what is this? Who are you? What is this? I was getting that back. Not in any words or voices or anything. It was just like, no, this is the grandmother energy, the universal grandmother energy. And once I realized that, that's when I just kind of sat there in that space. And kind of like if you were a kid and you sat in the arms of your grandmother, something's happening there. There's some kind of activation, some kind of release. All these things are happening. And you're connecting the dots with things that we can't even perceive. So that's what I did. I sat there, and I chose to sit there in that whole 15 minutes in that relationship with that grandmother energy and just listen, because I knew that even on a baseline subconscious level, this is what was something was happening. Something very positive, something very crucial to my experience was happening. And there's not much more that I can explain. The more, linear things that I attach to something that's so non-linear, it's actually going to take away from it. But if you know what I'm talking about in reference to being able to tap into those energies, that's what I experienced. And people explain all this. I see clowns. I see these beings in there. When I was on ayahuasca, I could understand where that comes from. DMT, not so much, not yet at least. But like I said, I compare that to experiences with the dreams. Because when you get into dreams, because I've faced some real fucked up shit in dreams, beings, whatever it is. And eventually, because I've been dreaming since I was 2, so this is, almost 38 years now. Once you start to face those things, you start to become the nightmare for those things. You start to become the nightmare for them, because you can do things in so-called their world that they are incapable of doing. So they can only affect you as much as you are not interacting in the experience where they reside. So I haven't had much experience with that, but back to the ayahuasca, I did experience some kind of visions, but like I said, having that dream nightmare background, it was very fleeting. It was very quick, because whatever it was, whether they're actual entities or beings or whatever it was, once you step into that space, they're gone. They're just like, oh, you're looking at me? Oh, fuck. And then you're bringing light to darkness, and they can't live in that light. So once you hold your own, once you stand your ground, you're a different being, and they can see that, and then they can. But a lot of people, the majority of people, don't experience that part of themselves in dreams, reality at all. Kids see themselves as like superheroes back in the, but once you grow up, you kind of lose that, because you're beat down by the system. You're beat down by the reality to be this codependent, submissive, weak little thing that has zero courage and zero abilities outside of, the physical reality. It's nonsense. So if you don't have those limitations, when you go into that space, it's a lot easier. So before I go back to ayahuasca, DMT only lasts about 15 minutes. Ayahuasca lasts about 5 hours. What I said was the comparison between the two is that since DMT does not have those heavy earth energies attached to it, it's very universal. You only need 15 minutes to explain the energies of reality, which is a very kind of generic way to explain what DMT allows you to tap into. But as far as how I would explain it to somebody, if they're asking what are the comparisons between the two and why are they different, DMT is different because it doesn't have those heavy earth energies, so you don't need to explain that story for 4 hours and 45 minutes. You don't need all that time. It really only takes 15 minutes to introduce you to the energies of reality, and you can do whatever you want in that space with that amount of time. With ayahuasca, you can dive deeper into the earth energies and the energies of reality all at the same time, but for 5 hours. And since you have to go into those depths of those storylines, it gives you 5 hours to go there. So you're clearing anchor points from deeper layers of reality when you're in ayahuasca. You can, like I said, you could do this on DMT if you focus to do that. But it's just a lot easier because the active ingredient is already there. So you can, instead of having to turn a switch on DMT to go to that space, the switches are already turned on in ayahuasca because you've ingested that earth energy, and you can just step on in. You don't have to, turn a switch on. You don't have to have an extra step there. You can just step to that space because you're already there. So that's the main difference between the two, and why I've explained it takes a little bit longer to experience that medicine compared to DMT. So once I got the groove of being in that ayahuasca space and traveling and clearing and visiting all this different stuff and doing all these different things, I'm about 3.5 hours in. So I got, an hour and a half to fly and dance and all this other stuff. And this is when I started to tune in with what the ayahuasca shaman was doing. And what I realized what he was doing was that he was playing with the energies of the room, of the entire experience, with the medicine, with the tobacco, with the family. You could see what they were doing, because they're not just there to be present there and hold space. They're there to assist you in this experience, both physically and non-physically. The music helps you with that. This is what the drum is. The drum allows you to not only anchor yourself, but it allows you to travel because you have that anchor point. And outside of that, it also allows you to jump into a rhythm, a natural rhythm. When you're in a rhythm, you can create natural anchor points and be able to travel further. You can go as far as you can imagine because you have this anchor point of the rhythm of the music to amplify the light that is your body as an anchor point. So this is a big part of what the music does. Once I realized that, I started to play like in a drum circle, play with the shaman to help everybody around me, because you can also do that. Because you're not just, having a hard time by yourself. You're with other people. You're on like a ship. You're on like an ayahuasca ship. And if hella people are having a difficult time, if you don't know how to hold your space, then you can let that fuck with you. But if you know how to hold your own, you not only can do your own thing outside of their difficulties, you can also assist them with their difficulties. This is what the shaman do. This is what your assistants are doing. So you can do that as somebody that's part of. Now, this is not required. This is not a thing. This is just what I was guided to do when I was there. So I did that, and I started with the music. I realized that I was wearing my hoodie, and it had a zipper, and that zipper on it I was using as an instrument. So I was using it as like a little symbol or whatever it was. It was a little like it was playing the minor notes, the minor drum notes in between the drum. And I mean, it's pretty much completely silent outside of the music. So once you start to add an instrument to the music, it changes it. So the people start to hear it, you feel it, everything. And once people start tuning into that rhythm, it kind of lightens everything up, because you're like, oh, well, this person's doing okay, not only doing okay, but they're helping with the rhythm. So this is what I started to engage in, which was kind of fun. It grounded me. It helped me to get into a lighter space, which was nice, having anchored yourself in the deepest and darkest of spaces. Because like I said, that feminine energy is very warm, very comforting, but it also includes the birthing process, which is very darkness to light, dark, very bloody, very painful in many different ways. And you have to go through those processes before you get to that warmth. You have to be birthed into that space before you get there. This is why they do ayahuasca at night. This is why it's heavily connected with people. People have difficulty with darker energies and stuff like that. It's because they're not equipping. They're like a child engaging in a nightmare. They're not equipped to deal with that energy. So like I said, once you're more equipped, once you have more experiences, then you'll be good there and you can go further. Very similar to a dream space. Once you break all those barriers down in the dreams, you can start to fly. You can have lucid dreams. You could, like I've communicated with in broken dreams. When you break dreams, you transition to another dream. You can travel to other places. You can do other things in dreams you couldn't even perceive. You could do a lot of the things that you were doing in ayahuasca trips in dreams, just from a different kind of platform with a different kind of time space, because you only have so much time in your sleep cycle. So yeah, that's pretty much the trip and the comparison between the two. Once my ayahuasca trip started to settle down, once everybody starts to get used to it, comes to that 5-hour mark, everybody starts to come back to this happy medium. The music dies down, the Everybody's in this kind of like, whoa, you're awake, but you're still tired. And you get to rest. So we'll say 9 to 2 in the morning, 2:30, to get adjusted. 3 o'clock, you're back in your bed, and you sleep from 3 to say sunrise, 6:30, 7 o'clock. And once you get up, the food's all ready, and it's completely out of your system. You don't have any kind of residual anything. They have a table full of fresh fruits and this very light kind of filling, but fruit, mainly fresh foods. And then when you're done eating, you can walk around outside for a little bit, and then you come back in and have a conversation with another closing ceremony with the ceremonial shaman and the ayahuasca shaman. And then that's where you can ask your questions and try to figure out deeper, whatever's going on with your experience, put things into place on what was going on, what you saw. And then the shaman are there to help you interpret all of that. And that's pretty much it. That's the end of it. One thing that I wanted to go into on a whole nother video, but since I'm talking about it now and I got a little bit of time, was the sleep that you have in ayahuasca. Because a lot of people don't talk about this at all. It's just kind of a thing, and people do it, but you don't really see yourself doing it because you're so focused on the trip itself. Even when you're sleeping, you're kind of tripping. But what I was explaining to a friend of mine is that the sleep that you get, because in 5 hours you're going through some shit, and you're going to want to, take doze off for a little bit. So you're going to want to take a little nap, and you do. And since time is so different, like when you take a 20-minute nap or even a 5-minute nap when you're waking up, your relationship with time is completely different. So when you take a 5 or 10-minute nap while you're in ayahuasca, it's not only different, it's extremely different. So how I've explained to other people is that the freshness that you get from a nap and the freshness that you get from good sleep and everything that comes along with that is amplified exponentially when you're in ayahuasca and you go to that space. You can think about having the comfort of ayahuasca in and as your body when you go to sleep. You can relax on such a deeper level that your sleep is unparalleled. You can actually rest, like your spirit can rest, your psyche can rest, your body can rest on such a deeper level because it's the medicine that is your bed, your blanket, your pillow. Whereas here it's just, when you're in a waking space, it's just focused on your body resting pretty much. When you're in ayahuasca taking a nap, your brain, your mind, your spirit can rest. I mean, your spirit's already resting anyway, but you get a sense of being able to rest with your spirit, with your mind when you're in that space, because so much of you is more active when you're in ayahuasca that when that active, like a muscle, starts to move around and then you want to take a break, you're sleeping from a different kind of sleep. It's a trip, and it's one of the most relaxing and cleansing experiences that you'll ever encounter. And I didn't really think about it until I was explaining it to somebody else, and it wasn't even explaining the trip. I was explaining like what you go through, because I put myself in that space to share with somebody. And then once I for this one time when I was explaining, I was like, wait a second, I took like a little nap there. And once I remembered that, I thought back, I was like, whoa, how good that felt. And this is, like I said, this is something that a lot of people don't talk about because they don't really go into this being a reality, but it is a thing. And it kind of reinforces the importance of sleep and dreams overall without the medicine, because it changes you. Your sleep is very important. It's not just resting the body. Like I said, you're resting, even when you're sleeping outside of the medicine, you're resting your psyche, your mind, the relationship between all of those parts of you is resting. And having the ability to travel. And when I say travel and dreams and stuff like that, it's not a stressful thing. It's when you're traveling and in that space, you're also healing yourself. And sleep, rest is a part of healing. So I would urge people, if you or when you go into ayahuasca specifically, take a moment to tap into that. Tap into the little nappy nap that you can go into, because it's still in your system. You're still so-called tripping, but in many different ways. When you're napping or get into that sleep space with the medicine being in your body, you're letting the medicine go deeper into your experience, because you don't have your conscious experience or reality, trying to hold on or interpret something. You're kind of opening yourself up to really be involved with that medicine on a deeper level, kind of in another form of letting go. And that travel, that subconscious travel that happens when you let go in that sleep space during having that medicine in your system, is like nothing else. Because you really don't need to interpret with your mind, with your conscious reality, what's going on. What's happening on the deepest of levels is uninterpretable. You can't explain it. So you can't see it. It's just happening. That's it. So when you're asleep, you're allowing that happening to happen more. So that's pretty much the gist of what I wanted to explain in reference to the sleep on ayahuasca, the relationship between ayahuasca and DMT. And outside of that, like I said, once you finish these experiences, you're changed for life. And it's not like you're a different person, because people get out of hand with it. Like people especially in the new age community, they get into that space and they're like, I'm this divine being and all that. No, it's like, wait a second. You took like a little DMT trip for 15 minutes. Just relax. You're not fucking Jesus and all the disciples and all that other stuff. Just humble yourself to know that you just, barely walked through a door in an entire world of doors. So, yeah, I mean, and people also take advantage of this. They get too much into what they think it is, and they turn it into a drug. Because in a sense, the medicine doesn't become a drug until the individual turns it into a drug. It doesn't exist on its own as a drug. It's not a drug. Obviously, scientifically, it's doing something chemically to your experience. But once it becomes an addiction, that's when it can become like a drug. And there's people who do this. They take advantage of it. I've interacted with people in ceremony that have done it, 100 and something times. And I'm thinking like, what the fuck are you doing? How many times do you need to go on this trip? What are you not learning? That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, what are you missing that you need to do this 100 times? Because like I said, it takes when you go on that trip, it's not just 5 hours. You're changed for life. And it's going to take weeks, months, even years to interpret that energy, to incorporate those energies and that reality into your all of your realities over time. And then you can go back into it again and then do kind of like jump off of that step. But after the 5 hours, think about it. When you're done with your trip and you go to sleep from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m, you're still in a sense like tripping, but not really tripping, but your energies aren't like a light switch. They're going to be lingering for a little bit. And that lingering energy is not going to go away completely, because like I said, it's going to incorporate itself into you and you're going to change. That's going to happen on different levels of change for years, and it's going to change you as you go along. And from my own experience, like I said, after, because there was a gap of a year and a half, I think it was like a year and a half until I took my second ayahuasca trip. And I'll save that for the next video about ayahuasca, because I'm sure there's going to be some things that I want to explain or share with people. But my heaviest experience in ayahuasca was actually on my second trip with a lower dosage. And I'll get into that because the dosage is a whole nother kind of talk, involving the lengths that you can go, but it's just a shorter amount of time and so on and so forth. But I'll get into that in the next video. If you have any questions about, what I've explained in this video or the trips overall, just leave them in your comments. And when I start to explain the next trip, I'll kind of incorporate them into that video. So in closing, if you're thinking about or looking into or have the means to go on these trips, either ayahuasca or DMT, even San Pedro, and like I said, I'll incorporate the masculine energies of San Pedro or what mescaline is into the next video at the same time. But if you're thinking about it and you're in the right space and you're ready, I would highly recommend it because it changes you for life. And this is another perspective that I'll get into in the next video. This is why these medicines and the people are criminalized, because that change is threatening to the system of codependency. You can't be codependent if you're empowered. You can't be powerless if you have all of these anchor points and connections through this medicine that is beyond this physical reality. You can't be controlled. So they'll criminalize all of these doorways that allow you to go into these libraries of yourself in order to keep you from yourself, in order to keep you trapped in this little box that can be controlled and profited on with that ignorance. Because keeping you away from this medicine is keeping you ignorant, like keeping you in a lower state of consciousness, like away, like in the TV, in social media, in the public school system. It's not to expand your consciousness. It's to keep you trapped within a limited frame of consciousness. So you can only go so far. So you can trap yourself and be trapped by the overall experience. So I'll get into all that stuff in the next video. Leave your questions and perspectives in the comments if you like. And if you're thinking about going into these spaces, do it under the right conditions. Make sure you follow your intuition. And if it doesn't feel right, there's no rush. Go with it when you're ready. Like I said, do it right. Go to Peru, go to where this came from, and let yourself go. Just go with it. Because any kind of grasp on reality that you think you have, this is why a big part of why I pulled away from these videos, or the importance of this, and this is why I focus so much on the downfall of turning this so-called truthful information into entertainment. It's counterproductive. It starts to work against you over time because you're creating another drug. The entertainment becomes a drug, no different than turning a medicine into a drug. And once you turn truth into a drug, you're being counterproductive. So I'll leave it there, and in the next video I'll start breaking down some more perspectives dealing with the other layers of reality that are revealed once you start to create that foundation.